Yeah, that's the name of your offices. Smoking Balconies Software. Wave the camera. Let everybody know we're out here. Right. We're out here at the Talking Energy Show, brought to you by Oilfield Tailgate, sponsored by everyone at oilfieldtailgate.com, and of course our benefactor of this podcast studio, the amazing Trace Management, engineering and consulting firm, oil and gas, everything. So thank you, Trace Management, for this space, and I appreciate my friends coming in here. Introduce yourself. Let's go around the room. Tell me your name and how you got into oil and gas, where you grew up, all the jobs you've had. I want to know everything, guys.
All the jobs?
Yeah, the laundry list of, nice. You don't have to give me all your jobs. I was kidding. Like Paperboy, obviously.
For sure. Yeah. Well, my name is Trey Stout. I'm CEO and founder of Incyte Energy Solutions. I got into oil and gas because I was born in Oklahoma. Kind of couldn't help it. I tried to escape. I worked in Seattle. I worked in Manhattan. Had kids, moved back here. I've held a variety of jobs as I was discovering what I wanted to be when I grew up. I'd say the most interesting one was working at Victoria's Secret in Penn Square Mall.
Wow.
That was on a dare.
He went and applied.
I went and applied, and
to
my surprise, like the manager on duty right then took my application and just immediately goes, "When can you start?"
Wow.
I was like, I didn't expect you to take this seriously.
But you can't turn that down.
Yeah, no, I had to. Interesting deal.
I'm so glad you're in oil and gas
now. Jonathan?
My name's Jonathan Jordan. I grew up South Oklahoma City. I graduated from the University of Oklahoma with a journalism degree, and I've been in oil and gas for the last 15 years. So,
where'd you start out? What was your first job in oil and gas?
My first job, I worked for, and that was one of the funny things that I always got made fun of right out of college. BJ Services before they were Baker Hughes. I was a associate frac field supervisor training program. So basically just a green hat out there swinging a hammer and being made fun of by the guys who'd been there for decades.
Hazing might be a part of our industry, but it's for good reason. They want to keep you safe.
Completely.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
if you don't get hazed, how would you know how to haze the next guy?
Exactly.
Continuity.
You have any story? What was some of the things they haze you about as a green hat and a frac hand?
Well, and again, I think we were talking about this before the show of you're collecting frac friends throughout the industry. You surround yourself.
I manifest frac friends now. I mean, we've delivered a lot of fire suppression systems out to frac fleets. So, something about you guys are just the hardest working, most lovable people in the industry, and pretty bright for the most part. You went and you had to go and bring oil and gas up out of the ground with pressure. You knew how to blow into the straw so you'd get it to shoot back up.
Well, yeah, but you also have the guys that, especially coming out there in the first month, would let you bang around with a sledgehammer going the wrong way with a nut for 10 minutes, wondering why it's not tightening and connecting pipe.
They did expect you to know that
they did expect that, but jeez.
Yeah, you were in journalism.
I was in journalism first, guys. Like, cut me some slack.
You were going to turn it into a poem later.
Hey, guys, what's my important job today? I'm coming out of college, and you're going to stand on top of these tanks, and you're going to let us know how many feet we pump downhole.
Now you're not the first generation of oil and gas, that's for sure. You have some.
I have lineage.
You have some DNA out there, that surrounds you. You have good family.
My uncle, he's been in it for more than 30 years. My dad kind of came full circle. He was in oil and gas and then became a stockbroker and then is now back into oil and gas. And so I have some good lineage there.
The privateers, I like
the privateers.
They're a lot of good people.
A lot of good people.
All your relatives that are in oil and gas that I know of are leaders. You're leaders.
Well,
and oil and gas education is vital these days. And that's why we're in here doing this, because what you're doing with Incyte, with the why, and we've talked about that why. Right. It's, why do I do everything that I do? Why haven't I measured this yet? Everything can be measured.
Yeah, for sure. That's Jonathan. I've talked about it quite a bit. One of my favorite quotes from Galileo of talking about what the Earth rotates around fame said, "Measure what's measurable, make measurable what is not so." And it's really kind of the foundation of improving anything. If you got an F1 car and you don't measure your lap times, how do you know you're making it any better? You don't measure your fuel consumption. You don't measure your oxygen intake. You don't know what the engine's doing. Oil companies haven't been subjected to real competitive pressure in a long time. because everybody needs it, right? Everyone's kind of a captive audience. Like, I'll take it for whatever, whether it's $4, $2, $8, people still need to go to work, so they'll buy it. Only sort of recently with, advent of the internet, I don't want to talk about too much about international energy policy, but there's much more of a force. Like, we saw oil go to -$7. People would pay to take delivery because it was just overflowing. No one knew what was going to happen with all the COVID stuff. And so we're seeing now the capital getting more sophisticated first. And so the guys drilling holes are downstream of the capital available. And so they've got new lists of stuff you got to know. You got to know what's going on in the formation. You got to know where the water is, where you're getting the water. You just have to know a lot more. It used to be very shoot from the hip. And so until you measure your process in your company, it's very difficult to prove you made it better. And so a lot of what we're doing is kind of just asking the question, like, what do you do when you roll a truck? Why did you roll a truck? What was on the truck? How does it get billed? How do you know if they got paid? And a lot of that, once you do it, it'll lower your insurance premiums. It'll increase your confidence in your own operations. It'll show you new revenue opportunities. It will cut costs. It's just overall health. If you're running an F1 car, you want all the best instruments measuring everything possible down to the guy driving its blood pressure. You want everything.
How long was that light, on in the shop,
Oh, exactly.
over this area without anybody underneath it? Could that be turned off?
Sure.
You can go into a business on any scale and see what every single person does and their movements, and then every single piece of equipment and their movements and what it does.
Like in an ideal I hate to say ideal, but from a sort of a bean counter standpoint, yes, ideally you want everything like that. Like you're saying, though, a lot of it's just inconsequential. So that factory light was on a workbench that nobody used. Okay, it cost you $90 a quarter. It's not even worth talking about. As soon as two executives have a conversation about that light, the company lost even more money.
Yeah.
And so you have to be intelligent about
But as software grows less expensive and the gadgets to measure that become less expensive, you can go after even those tiniest of things.
Definitely. Like, we generally find it's just such low-hanging fruit. Yeah. You start talking to a company that's, if they're doing 9 figures of revenue, they're going to have 6-figure problems all over the place.
Yeah.
So you don't need to talk about the 3-figure problems because there's something way more meaty and interesting that can be directly solved in the next few quarters that's going to show up on the revenue.
Do you think that might be, something that we need to turn up in and go back to like the Dave Ramsey kind of thing, like rice and beans and go, but like, whenever he goes after debt, he's like, you wipe out the smallest one first and then the next one, and the next one. Because our industry is really good at like, I'm going to step over that $1 so I can go get that 100, or I'm going to step over that 100 to get that 1,000, or that 1,000 to get the million or 100. Like we go like, that's not important. That's not important.
And that's one of the
it adds up.
And that's one of the things that we talk about constantly is, especially with our focus into the oil and gas space, right? Capitalistic world, oil and gas in that industry is one of the last like archaic versions of technology, right? I mean, you've gone one way for so long and shooting from the hip, right? And you're on a collision course with technology. And one thing that I like to say, especially from our guys from a software engineering standpoint, is eventually they have to run into the petroleum engineering guys, right? You have to make things more efficient. You have to find, if your company, is hemorrhaging revenues because, you're stepping over that $1 to get to the 100, you're stepping over the 100 to get to the 1,000, right? If your company's a dam, and it's hemorrhaging revenue, which big hole can we go plug first? Let's go find out how to fix this, make it more efficient, and then move on from there. And make those processes, especially whenever it comes to a revenue standpoint, because we're feast and famine in oil and gas. I used to, 2 years ago, I was wearing a hat that said, make oil, barrel oil $80 a barrel again, right? So it's one of those where it's an ever-changing industry, but you have to evolve. And that's one thing I think that oil and gas hasn't done is evolved technologically. I mean, of course, you got the drillers. I mean, you have automated drilling and horizontal and steering, but there's a lot of processes that go in after you drill that hole, and we go straight to the service side, and that's just from personal experience. There's so many moving parts, but those moving parts, do you know what every moving part does, and how much is it costing you?
Have you ever? Say one of your bigger customers? What's the most processes you've measured or been able to integrate into your software?
Sure. Basically,
you're talking inventory, you're talking HR, you're talking like we talked about the lighting. Like, what's the most that anybody's ever like let you in and say measure this?
Like we've been pretty far up the skirt, as it were.
That's a good term.
Down to like even instrumenting the manufacturing process. So all the way down to This guy needs to torque these 6 nuts on this piece of equipment to this many foot-pounds, having 3 different camera angles on his workbench while he's doing it, recording that for posterity with the serial number. It's going in the ERP system. We know which warehouse it's in, how many miles are on it, as it were, if it's refurbed, the last time it went out. Like we got the bench ratings. We know how much pressure it can apply. We know what the lift per stage is on that. We know all the pump coefficients, et cetera. And all of that is recorded. So that thing blows up in the field 3 years later. You can pull it out of the hole. You can basically do an autopsy on it, figure out what happened to it, go back and look at the assembly footage and find where in the supply chain something went wrong.
Or nothing went wrong. It was just an outside.
Maybe it's just,
no one's at fault. This is just a happening.
Well, something's always at fault. You just may not want to be a jerk about it, right? Like maybe Todd didn't torque it the right way. Okay, then Todd's not fired. He's great, but we need to like ramp up the training around how important this is.
Well, actually got to seismicity or weather, whatever, or just H2S in the field.
Yeah, or maybe we need to look at a new washer vendor because what they're sending us isn't rated right for the acid we encounter in North Dakota, whatever. But having all of that is just deciding that this is valuable info. When an engineer is assembling a product of ours, that shouldn't just be in isolation. Like it shouldn't just sort of pass the inspected by number 7. We have every bit of which part, where we got it from, who we bought the washer from, what truck it was on, how it ended up in that pump or that intake or that seal, whatever. And so you can get really detailed in there. And a lot of that adds cost, but it aids in training. It helps understanding what you built. It lowers your insurance rates because you can show how it was put together and you have safety and testing steps for every piece of assembly.
Or now, guys, the big boy on the block, ESG, it brings in investors.
Very much so. It provides access to capital.
What do I want to find out? I mean, I was an opponent, if you will, of ESG because I thought everybody was going to lean more on the environment side. But then now as I get into it, the safety and the governance, well, the governance isn't so much about, as much as, we all thought it was going to be the social stuff. It's investors going, hey, oil and gas, we know you're a good investment, but don't burn through our dollars without transparency anymore.
Well, and look at the industry now. I mean, any MSA that has to go out now has to have ESG compliance, right? You have to have it.
Yeah. Investors want to invest in us, but they want, I don't want to like, that didn't work out. Sorry about your luck. You don't have any more money. It didn't turn out as we thought. I'm not coming back to your industry, or I am with new parameters around how this will go in the future.
I also think that's kind of the guidelines, right, for private equity now is, okay, this is more of an assurance that we have that we need to focus on the industry.
I get it. Now we're going to partner with ESG. And really, we were always ESG all along for the most part in the fact that I don't want to waste money. I just don't have the tools until now with your capabilities.
Again, I mean, to my point, they're making you measure stuff you didn't used to measure.
We didn't have the ability.
Exactly. So now I can measure company A versus company B and be like, well, this is more investable. I believe more strongly my dollars are going to come back. And you can't improve the process without measuring something. So ESG is capital's way of measuring what we're doing with these holes in the ground.
But that makes more of a secure oil and gas industry for America, which makes us, more free, have more security for our energy, and protect ourselves. Like you said, we don't want to talk too much about the rest of the world and energy policy, but we can protect what we have here within our own borders to be able to provide what we need, plus the rest of the world and their increasing needs because of world policy and world politics.
And I think that too, especially coming from a technology side, and this is one of the reasons that I joined Incyte, is the capabilities of technology now for oil and gas are continuing to grow, right? But we were at was it a panel? I believe it was a panel with different representatives. Petroleum Alliance. And one of the representatives, and I won't mention his name, but it was literally talking about the problem that our government is sanctioning, oil and gas and energy. I mean, we're sanctioning ourselves, right? So we have to figure a way, whether it's technology and being ESG compliant and going through that, we have to be sustainable. We have to be efficient. And if this is the way that we're going to measure, then this is the way we have to go. But technology is the new way of getting there.
Yeah. And I said this before, there's a book out there right now from Alex Epstein, Fossil Future, which on and on again shows, just the fingers of how far out our energy reaches. And within that is the ESG and what we all know is without that investment, we're relying on solely production of the dollars that produces. So if that is the case, then it's got to be ever more, creatively utilized in those technologies, the software, which will make us efficient down the road and build in what we're going to future-proof our industry with what you're doing.
Oh, definitely. I mean, just imagine some other country, right, wasn't sanctioning itself and went full tilt R&D and used like 11% of their GDP in just oil and gas research. It would not take them long to catch up to our production ability. Like most companies don't do it. They don't have access to the resources. They don't have access to the capital to try. They don't have access to the fields. So we have a very sophisticated capital market. It's very easy with a good idea to go just get $10 million to do something.
Is it?
It's shockingly easy if it's actually a good idea. But you just don't have that opportunity somewhere else, right? You can't, I live in, I don't want to throw out any examples, but if I grew up in Belgium and I want to revolutionize drilling technology, my options are very limited. I have to get educated there, convince somebody else in another country to give me. I'm definitely not going to attract New York capital to my Belgian mining situation. It's just very unlikely to happen. So,
is that what attracts you most to oil and gas? You think is just how vital this is?
It's critical. It's energy independence. If you need someone else to heat your house in the winter and keep your kids warm, you're going to do what they say. And it's just so American. I dug a hole in my yard and now I got a Rolls Royce, man. It's just very American. And it all started that way, right? Jed Clampett shot at some varmint, right?
Oh, that's
and we all know the story.
Yeah. Well, we hope that there's young people watching, and we're doing some energy education here, and they may not know about the Beverly Hillbillies at all.
All right. Well,
but they're obviously a true story.
Of course, that's a very true story.
But again, we were actually talking about this the other day, but I mean, that's one of the things with oil and gas too, is that age gap. There's a 15-year age gap in between, right? It's, we've got 40, 45 and below, and then 60 plus. And so you're seeing that age gap, but you have the old guard, as it will, they're exiting. It's time to go. Okay. 2020 and with COVID and all, okay, that was the last bust I can take. I'm done. I'm cashing in my chips. Time to go. It's moving on. It's, acquisitions and mergers. And that's one of those where I really focus whenever I'm asking questions of these software engineers is the what if questions, right? What if I needed this done? And I'll give you a perfect example just for, personal experience from a chemical service side. We were joking a little bit before we started this podcast about, I picked a great time to start a chemical service company. It was early or mid 2019. Perfect time. And then we go straight to, negative. And the wells are shut in. Nobody's ordering anything anymore. And it's one of those, okay, well, how can I do that transition? And I think you're getting a lot of that now with companies that are merging and acquire. They want to get more vertically integrated. So we're going to add a service company. We're going to add a wireline. We're going to add a mud company. I mean, it just the pieces of moving around to try and fit the puzzle of what they want for vertical integration. But do they know the actual cost? Because the service company that you may purchase has a completely different software system of what you're invoicing, right? Of how you do inventory, of how you do emails, all right? Some people, whether it's Google Docs or Dropbox or whatever it is, you got to figure out the actual cost in that. And a lot of people, one of the things, some of the major players that he dealt with before he brought me in, I was just like, well, God, I know so many mom and pop. When I say mom and pop, I mean, it could be from 10 million to 100 million. I still consider it in that mom and pop range, right? Wow. Do they have a CTO? All right, because you can't tell me. It's like, well, I mean, we have an IT department. Okay, when you say IT department,
we better tell people.
We might as well go ahead and let them know.
Chief Technology Officer. I mean, there you go. They have not. I mean, my company has not named CTO, and I'm like hey Matt, restart the the Wi-Fi router. I'm the CTO. That's it.
And that's the common conception of what that is, right? Is that IT is like the guys who make sure you can print, and that you have antivirus on your laptop, and it's very different from say like an East or West Coast like venture-backed CTO who is in basically that's what you're selling. Like the software is the value prop of the company. Person's more like the chief revenue or the chief product officer.
Most of these buildings that house the oil and gas companies, I mean, essentially, if we really break it down, I mean, yes, they pull resources out of the ground, but they're kind of a IT software company.
Yeah, and a lot, especially the ones dealing with land and title and petroleum engineering. trying to figure out kind of what the roll up for the whole play is. Like, we're about to go buy half of New Mexico, and here's why, and here's where we're going to drill. And assembling all of that is very much.
Engineers are smart, and they have amazing smart tools now, and efficiencies like yours, where everybody in there has an amazing software that they're using.
I would say it's kind of Tower of Babel a little bit. There's lots of amazing little tools, and none of them can understand each other.
Oh, we got integration of SA. So what are some of the, maybe not your competitors? You're in a unique space,
Sure.
But what's some of the bigger competitors versus some of the small ones that you can shape the difference? What's the big one out there that people like? I don't need this software. Maybe. SAP.
Yeah, SAP is definitely like the biggest dog. I think the
Oracle.
Like we helped a company out of Tulsa. They were making ESPs, submersible pumps.
Okay.
And we started working with them in 2014, just building some really basic field accounting tools to just help them remember to charge customers for what their techs were doing in the field. The revenue growth right there was immediate, almost 20% quarter over quarter, just because guys weren't forgetting to put it on the bill.
Throwing money away.
100%, just giving stuff away for free. And I bet every service company is doing some form of this.
They do.
And so we built stuff, and this is using 2014 tech, which sounds modern, but like by today's standards, I mean, that's 8 years ago. It was very different. The iPhone was 2 years old. Or no, sorry. This is after that. But getting anything to work offline, you've got these guys, and now they're out in the field somewhere. There's no Wi-Fi. So it has to work offline. It has to be able to get back to the hotel room, upload what they did, and then it has to settle in SAP. So the long story there, we worked with a small service company doing a few $100 million in revenue, small, quote unquote, right? We helped build out their field billing. When they got bought by a major in 2017 for $500 million, they said, hey, this software is better than what we're using. This is $1 billion multinational. Hey, this little company in Tulsa is doing it right. And so they start asking us to extend it and move it to other pieces and start integrating it with SAP. And so if you've got a large company with any sort of supply chain or manufacturing, there's a couple players on the block. You get, Oracle, Microsoft have products. SAP is definitely the biggest dog. But if you got a big company, it might take you 3 years and $400 million to fully implement SAP.
All of your employees that you've spent all this money on the software, all the training and integration that you already spent, and now these companies are merging. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's mind-bending to think about how much money isn't accounted for just in that software.
Well, we build their M&A budget for 3 years after the acquisition. So, yep, it's done. We bought them. Like, not really, because their day-to-day operations are not integrated with how. And this is a public company. They have to make SEC filings based on the revenue from this random software from Tulsa. And so this becomes a very chop, chop, boys, let's make this work. And so you have to be adaptable. You have to understand, it's like a Rosetta Stone. I have to understand the big corp and what they need and what the old company did. And you have to bridge those things in a timely manner in a way that you would sign the paperwork to the IRS, to the SEC.
Well, and then back to the nitty gritty of the non-public companies, right? The service ones who've been around for 30 or 40 years that weren't going to go public, and, all of them who are still servicing, and they've been through the ups and the downs and the busts and feast and famine of, okay, well, how do we compete with some of these majors that are acquiring these other companies? How do we keep ourselves competitive?
Or if you've started your company to hopefully get bought someday, mm-hmm. and you're thinking that far ahead, and if I start using right from the get-go, and is that your favorite place to come into a company? It's like, hey, before you really get too big, let me help you out. But
sure.
You can go and think about, well, I'm future-proofing my company to either succeed, when a lot of us don't even plan on success, right? Invest in yourself and plan on success.
Well, and it's that scalability, right? I mean, even from, you had all of these during COVID, right? You had all these software companies that were coming out and IPOing for these big numbers, and I got the next best way of, here's the platform we're going to use. And the one thing that I know that you don't like to talk about in this is, like, everybody has a new dashboard for something, right? Like, here's what we're going to do. You get your user login for a dashboard, and this is how much easier it's going to make. Well, the question is, especially from the oil and gas side, right? You have the mergers and acquisition. You have to figure out that gap analysis of, okay, if I'm going to go out and acquire a company and I'm going to spend, let's say, $100 million, is that the actual figure? Because you're still going to have to go back and retrain. Let's say you buy a service company. Okay, well, what about Tom or Bob, who's out in the field, who've been there for 15 years, that still aren't going to retire for another 15? right?
Well, they're
Training purposes.
They're going to actively resist whatever the new corp tells them to do.
Exactly.
But you're just adding.
Simplify.
I mean, yeah, simplify is adding a gadget to everything he does, so his process isn't slowed down.
Sure.
He can move at the same speed he always has, but everything around him works differently.
Right. And that can slow them down. I mean, like this sort of corporate mandate. Thou shalt, when you leave the warehouse with a truck now, thou shalt do these 5 things, do these 8 things, sign the logbook, put your thumbprint on this.
So much. It's too much.
It adds quite a bit. And so we found a lot of success in just talking to the actual people that are going to use it, not building it for this pie-in-the-sky design. I'm a huge fan of low-tech. It's lower cost. I would rather you text with some field equipment rather than log into some mobile app to try to mess with it. Just save that pump in your phone as this pump name, and now you can text it and be like, what's up, bro? And it can text you back what it's
almost
doing.
like a Slack for
basically Slack for my wells. I just want to talk to them.
Slack for my wells. I'm talking to my wells.
Yep. And you say like, hey, how about next Tuesday you send me like what the downhole pressure report for the last week has been. Just ask for it. Send it to me. And now you're not arguing about what color it is. Should that button be on the left? Should it be on the like? It just doesn't matter. Just text. And you can get that across to guys because basically anybody can understand that. There's no new interface to learn. There's no design documents. There's none of that.
I want to come into this podcast studio and go, Incyte, turn on all my lights in my podcast studio. Okay.
We can definitely
And
do
it's
that.
just me. And Incyte, make it work and sound good.
It's the beauty of what we do, right? It's exceptionally boring when you get down in the weeds. But what we're
I'm not going to write code. That's you.
Oh, you don't need to.
That's not me either.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things whenever I came in, I go, okay, listen, you guys are working at such a high level. I go, you got to bring this down. You got to help me out because I came from the service side. I came from the field side of this. If you tell me that Tom, who's the bumper, who's running around, doesn't have to thief a well and he can just tell you exactly what the levels are at, easy. It's off his plate. That makes it easy. If he can, I dealt with the what if, right? That was one of the things that before I came on to Incyte that I kept, and I bugged the crap out of him. I mean, I sat in his office. He's trying to code and get stuff done, and he's talking to his engineers. I have no idea what they're talking about, but hey, what if? Can we do this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
There's no,
no. And right, one of the examples, especially, I mean, we look now, and one of the big things, right, is supply chain issues.
Okay. So chips are terrifying.
Oh yeah.
Taiwan, are we kidding me? Like, if you are not paying attention, the world needs chips.
Oh yeah.
If anybody doesn't don't mess with anything to stop our chips.
Yeah, but they also need drill bits. But my question is how long does it take to get this? If you only have 3 of these and you sell all 3 in a week, what has been notified to let you know?
How am I going to order Chinese drill bits online if I don't have chips to use my computer? So it doesn't matter. All those are coming over from China. I need chips. I need software engineers. I don't want to have to write. Man, my wrist, it gets tired. And where do you get the ink from? From China pens. See, I need chips to order those ink pens with my logo on it.
Right.
It all goes back to oil and gas and chips.
Well, the supply chain piece is something that really only the biggest companies really have. Everyone else is managing it in Dropbox. When was the last time we ordered those bits? Let me go look in here in my email. Yeah. And okay, it was in May, and we ordered this many. We're like, well, I think it should be more. Like, why? They don't know. Just feel like it. Maybe they'll run a few reports based on something, but nothing's sitting there warning them 6 weeks into the quarter. You're selling 50% more of these than you were at this point last quarter.
Can you go grab my data out of, so say we've been, say I'm a small company, I've been doing, QuickBooks, and I've been doing their inventory and their work orders. Can you grab all that and throw it into something new or collaborate with
Definitely. Some of it's a little bit like a forensic crime scene investigation kind of. It's putting together, okay, well, your purchase orders look like this and they show up at this rate and we'll put them into this new system and we'll start modeling and now, your back office person's got this new form they're going to fill out when they're doing the PO so that they simultaneously go into your prediction engine. They also go into QuickBooks. They also go off to something else that your ESG score or whatever. But it's what I was going to say about this is why it's very boring to do it. My engineers are good at it. And
it's not boring to them.
Well,
they're finding new ways to integrate it all the time.
They can't do anything really novel. Like different, AI people would maybe argue with me that they can write symphonies and stuff, but they're not really writing new symphonies as much as kind of making like a macaroni salad out of other symphonies they've heard. Right? So you can mishmash I can go train it on every Wikipedia article.
I've seen them make frittatas.
Sure. But it's more like a human defines the recipe.
Okay.
and then the computer can make 10,000 of them. Here's my strawberry muffin recipe. Now make 100,000 of those.
Give me every variable, and then let's
Good
go.
for that.
And then somebody, see, that's where you need AI to go, okay, now there's another piece that goes, I just made you 10,000 different recipes in 10,000 ways.
Sure.
I need somebody to go, I need one of those computers to go taste all those real quick.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like licorice and salt is the main ingredients, probably not correlated with success.
Yeah, you can throw, yeah, so, I mean, it's really endless what you can do now.
Well, I've always been surprised. Like, I'll give you a brief example here. I was working for an advertising company back in New York, maybe like 2012. We were scanning all the commercial emails that people send out. So we had this robot that would go sign up for Old Navy, Eddie Bauer, Toyota, whatever, and get on all their promotional lists. Whoa. And we found out very quickly is like sophisticated brands, like Eddie Bauer specifically, is not selling hoodies in Florida, right? Like it's very seasonal, and they're very sophisticated in where they're marketing what. So you might get a promo code to save money on winter wear, but only if you're like north of the Mason-Dixon kind of thing. So we started getting all these emails, tens of thousands of them a day, and putting them in there. And so we were tasked with which companies are offering free shipping. We'd be like, okay, well, engineers think, well, we should probably just like search the text of the email for free shipping. So without boring the hell out of everyone, we set up what's called a Bayesian classifier. And so we went in and we had humans find us 1,000 emails that they thought were free shipping and 1,000 emails that weren't free shipping. And then we let the computer sort through a few hundred other thousand based on those parameters. And it starts spitting back all these ones like, this one has free shipping, this one has free shipping. And we couldn't figure out how it knew that. Like, because sometimes they would write free shipping like in a graphic, in cursive, on diagonal, on top of some lady wearing this fleece or something like that.
Wow.
Right? And it wouldn't be in the message. And it turned out what the computer came up with is if the text in the footer mentions Puerto Rico, there's like a 99.8% chance that free shipping's involved. And they carved out Puerto Rico.
Piece of that.
So no human would ever sit there and be like, how would you tell if a company's offering free shipping? You would say stuff like search for free shipping, and it's no, you search for Puerto Rico.
So I'm just fleshing this out. So night fire specialists, we have a new gadget that we want to put in every single tank in the world that could possibly get struck by lightning and burn down because it has hydrocarbons being stored in it. You know, whether it's a water tank with a little bit or a full-blown, oil tank, but whatever it is. So we have the gadget that we know we can put out a fire now. It's a fire tab. It's simple and it works. And it sprays off our fire foam into the tank and covers
And
up.
it doesn't need the internet to figure this out, that there's a fire.
No, it just
deploy.
happens manually. Future-proof it. Maybe we can do some automation and all that on that particular piece of equipment. Because right now it's just manual, boom, there's foam on it. But as a marketing and business development and sales guy and vice president of this company, how do I find all the tanks in the world? And I need your company to go and find out, well, here's how many, because we went to, and I want to know, who the operator of them is and who, and where they're at and what they're storing. I mean, and the volumes and the size of the tank. And, oh, wait a minute, I need to show the value to the customer. Like, well, if this tank, and this tank burned down, you spent... you spent maybe $1,500 per tank on our piece, but here's the total cost of you getting that day it burned down.
Yeah, total loss.
Total loss. Here's your total loss costs, and just people doing people things. I ask people questions in here, stuff like that. So you'll probably do that for me for free, but like we found out, like there's roughly 1 million wells online that are being recorded. They're producing oil and gas. Just for enough people were asking me
that we know of.
Yeah, but then for the environment, the ESG side, and for people now delving into orphan wells, can software like this be tasked with going to find the true number of orphan wells out there? That right now there's probably 8 million that, people can kind of find pretty quickly, but, is it 3 or 4 times that?
Sure.
Sure. And how many really need to be plugged and abandoned, or with the new technologies available, can you have the software come up with ways to go, you know what? This may be a plug and abandonment candidate to a major operator, but really we could sell this, and somebody, with a small operator, it's like Marshall Hall was in here and he buys wells that were producing 3 barrels. To him, like, that's a gold mine. I don't want to plug that. I'm gonna double that. I'll make 6 barrels a day. I'll have 3 of those, and I have enough money for me. Right, so I've got mailbox money. If I go out and do my own pumping, get my own truck to haul off water, yada yada yada. There's somebody that's pretty happy life, they're an operator, and that's all they do.
And that's one of the deals too, especially with the integration for technology with service companies, right? I mean, you have multiple service companies that provide multiple service, whether upstream, midstream, downstream. And we talked a little bit about the technology of, drillers. They have a right hole, but there's a whole bunch of different services that come through that. But the integration through that is going back to what we said. Okay, are we going to step over that dollar to get to the 100? Are we going to take that 100 to get to the 1,000? I think it's also to the integration of collecting those data points, right? And finding out exactly the what ifs. And that was one of the exciting things whenever I came into Incyte is the what ifs. Is going back to, okay, coming in, what if I did this? Can we do this? Can I put a geofence around my warehouse so that Tom, whenever he goes out, that he doesn't forget anything and an alarm goes off? And we go back to, production can be shut down for the simplest thing of we forgot a 15-cent O-ring, right? It's making sure that you have the redundancies to stop the revenue of bleeding, right?
Well, it's just, do you even know how your company makes money? And most people will be like, yeah, totally.
No,
like, no. Every detail of exactly how you make money. No, you don't. And you'll have a bender. You'll be sick one day. Like you will save money because you told the software how it works. Even if it's kind of wrong, you can always change it later. But it's just the specificity. Most people like operating up here.
That's what I don't want to leave any money on the table as more and more entrepreneurs. Obviously, our industry has always been full of them, but. Sure. Man, if I'm making the money we're making now, guys, what if we didn't bleed any money?
Right.
0 money bled. Am I actually making 3 times what we've been making now? I mean, how much waste have we had?
What was the company we're talking to? Found 350 million new revenue with no new drilling just by going back over the existing
we went to the Petroleum Alliance and was listening for Maverick. They bought 4 Point, and they found... was
350 million.
350 million without any new production.
No new drilling. Just going back over what all the assets they actually
But
purchased.
they also,
my goodness.
But one thing that they had mentioned in that too is they got their...
They paid for that software.
Yeah.
Well, they collectively went...
Everybody contact
software
them.
Works.
Not only will they pay for... that software will be paid for itself by the efficiencies it creates for your company. And how about the turnover rate that your company won't see because people now... Just that feeling of efficiency makes people happier at work, right? And people making more money. But also, we talked about it's R&D. So if they call you and they invest in your software to get them efficient, all that is a tax write-off.
Try to make it as simple as possible. If you have some business process that makes you revenue and it involves email, Dropbox, and spreadsheets, none of those things should be involved. You should basically write out the process. You can use SMS, you can use web forms, you can do offline stuff. But it's very likely going to save you on your tax bill. It's going to be a capital expenditure you can depreciate. Ask your accountant. But like to put it in very simplistic terms, you take the money you would have given the IRS, and we're going to help your bottom line or your top line.
He's given me the greatest sales pitch ever whenever I go out and talk to potential clients.
Yeah. Would you like free software that makes you more money?
Right.
Well, it's
or is that your I was going to ask you. Business to business guy. I was like, so what's your elevator pitch?
Mine is go ask your accountant what you're going to pay to the IRS this quarter.
That's your software budget.
That's whatever you're going to pay to the IRS this quarter. All right, give it to us rather than the IRS, and let us help develop some new software or technology for your company that's eventually going to generate revenue. Because the last time I checked, the IRS is not in it to make anybody money.
No, they're not going to help you.
They're not going to help you at all.
Exactly. Well, it's also going to make you more attractive to an acquirer because you actually know you're measuring your company. You know what works and what doesn't, and your supply chain's ironed out. Your business process is ironed out.
Or if you want to go buy everybody else and you're not acquired, you can go get capital.
You've got a better process. Yeah. You can bend them to your process and be like, we're going to buy you because you still use Dropbox and spreadsheets, and your front desk person is writing hand tickets, like handwriting tickets.
Well, the perfect example was the submersible pump company out of Tulsa that we were talking about earlier. I mean, 20% immediately quarter over quarter. That looks pretty enticing. Well, turns out it was enticing.
When you guys come to my office and see what I do, will you not get on to me for using somehow I've integrated GroupMe and Wix?
I won't. He will. I won't. He will.
No, I mean, it's a little like cyberpunk, right? Like if
I'm
you
so I'm so cheap. What's the freest software available? Stuff that I can just like crush together.
So there's kind of the comparison of whenever I'm talking to potential clients, right? Is getting them to understand that the initial money, which again, if they're not falling from right, hey, what are you paying the IRS this quarter? All right, give it to me and let me help you develop something. It's okay. Let's look within your budget to look past what the initial cost is, right? Is okay, if I spend X now, how much is it going to save me in the next 5 years? All right. If you're vertically integrating your company to go out and your ultimate goal is to go out and sell your company, build a business, go out, sell it, come back again, wait, go hang out on the beach and wait for your non-compete and go start another one and do that. Again, what's that number, right? To see what it could be in 5 years, how much it's going to save you and make you that more attractable.
I wonder sometimes if our industry is even driven by those numbers and our guts. I think we're just like driven by the sheer want to, see some kind of success in our industry.
I think it's a lot more want. Just coming from Oklahoma, I think it's a lot more want to.
Yeah, and I want to do something impressive to myself. I look at myself in the mirror each day and I'm like, what did we just accomplish?
Right.
Did I go out personally and put out a fire? And get to go on an emergency
contribute
call.
Somewhere.
Did I get to save one life?
But that's what you got to love about this industry, right? I mean, what's the more American thing that you can do, right? It's like go ahead and tell me I can't do something.
Yeah.
Let me show you I can.
I mean, money, and you get to the maturity level that we're at, and the wisdom level we're at, and the want of education, and I see all these young green hats, and I get goosebumps and sentimental.
I remember it.
They can bring a tear to my eye just watching these kids that come up, and I'm like, you are a candle wick waiting to happen. You have covered in hydrocarbons. Like, I can't wait to put fire suppression out here just so I can feel a little bit better and sleep at night when I flip open that light, and I'm like, where did my energy come from? That kid out there that is going to be saved.
Right. Well, and look, when we first got into it, and whether it was whether it's in software or cutting our teeth in oil and gas, it's always evolving. It's like, okay, what am I going to learn today?
Yeah.
Because that's one thing with this industry, and I always I keep asking questions because it's always evolving, right? And I think that's one of the things, especially with the age gap that we were talking about, right? You have the young guard coming in, the old guard going out, right? One of the things, whenever I was talking to some members for YPE, right, was what's some of your advice? And again, I'm almost 40, so I'm still considered, I guess, a young professional in energy. I don't know is the best answer, right? That's the one thing I continue to is whenever I came in and before I joined Incyte, and he was explaining, I gave him, I have no idea what you're talking about. Please explain this to me, because you get a lot of people who, especially with oil and gas and acquisitions and mergers, and they go off on the just say I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. What's going on within your business? Like, do you know every detail? Absolutely. Say I don't know. And let's figure it out.
And find out more. Say, I don't know. I'd love to hear what you. I'd love to hear what you do. That's why. I mean, this is my low key way into everybody's business, is because I want to be in the know of every single thing that is happening in oil and gas, from the guy who has the money investing to the software who runs it, so that somehow, some way, we bring in the next generation.
So the green hat that was helping you.
Yeah. And more, what you're doing is going to replace what somebody swinging a hammer does. We all talk about this, mass exodus of people, but the next group coming in, we need a huge body count, but it's all it's software engineers and techs and people that use data.
And there's certain positions that are going to be obsolete, but it's also
we're going to need more people.
But with technology, all right, those jobs are going to be replaced by other ones, and it's all going to be, again, it's a collision course of what I have told him. Software engineers and petroleum engineers, everybody in between, there's a place.
If I replace what you did, swinging a hammer, right, with a robot, I'm going to need 5 people,
right, to design
and create that robot and keep it maintained. I might need 20 people really at the end of the day. So we're going to need more and more and more people in oil and gas, not less.
A lot of people make the argument, right? Like, we don't have any chimney sweeps or like horse-drawn buggy drivers anymore, right? and why it may have been sad if your whole career was being a buggy driver at the point. Like the general idea is that that's not worthwhile for human calories to be expended on anymore. So do something else that is worthwhile.
We don't have to chew our food as much anymore because we developed oil and gas to cook our food. And that led to more calories for the human body and better proteins so that we have time to think with our brains.
Sure.
And come up with cool software. I mean, that's just the evolution of a chimpanzee spends how much of his day chewing leaves.
To improve is to change. You cannot improve without changing. You're not going to magically get better just doing what you were already doing. So you have to measure what you're doing, decide that's not right. We should do this other thing. Like we kind of
If you're not, somebody else will.
Yeah, exactly. And someone else is doing it. I mean, I think one of the healthiest mentalities as you're working on this stuff is to think there's somebody else like me, building something like what I'm doing right now.
No one else does what Incyte does. Sorry. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it right here. Incyte, come on.
But,
inciting a revolution of innovation in our industry that's going to, right here.
We'll put that on the website.
Yeah. Definitely. But somebody's going to do it if you don't do it. You can't just be like, well, we do it in Dropbox. LOL. Hope it goes on forever. It won't. It definitely won't. Like, I know people who are trying to kill your business every day, and they're in the Stanford computer science department. Like, they want your job gone because then they get to go to General Atlantic or some gigantic capital source and say, look, I can get rid of 80% of their labor force. And they're like, oh, sweet. Who do I write the check to? And so they are actively trying to kill what we do here. So if you don't catch up and become attractive to them or at least competent to them, you're not a threat. You're just a roll-up target.
Wow. I love all this. Well, oil and gas is forever grateful to smarter people than we deserve.
Well, I don't think it's just not so much smarter. It's just kind of threat assessment. Like if you're running your military still on some Greek tactics, right? And now we've got man-portable anti-tank weaponry and like full satellite coverage. Like
I do think that more of our equipment needs some, cool turrets on it.
I agree.
We should definitely incorporate more oil and gas and military tech together.
I am really scared of military tech, but
you've probably deep dived more than I have.
I'm very scared.
I haven't gone down that rabbit hole yet, but yeah.
I mean, first of all, they're going to develop stuff that we can probably, oil and gas is very good at coming up with neat stuff that the rest of the world probably uses now, like besides hydrocarbons.
Sure.
But so military also does the same thing. We all benefit from GPS and whatnot. So
Facebook.
Yeah, well, okay, maybe Facebook, but I like GPS. Out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, I'm finding that well site.
Oh, very cool.
And now you know how to track assets.
Sure.
Because of that.
Oh, 100%.
Whenever I came on, one of his software engineers, innovate through technology or get destroyed by it. Right. I mean, that's basically it. And, I'm not all Terminator here, but I mean.
Well, it's the game's up, right? If everyone's got muskets and you invent an Uzi, right? Like, how long can you get along with saying, like, we don't need those. We have esprit de corps and we have better uniforms. We have better training.
We have EFRAC now.
Like, eventually, somebody with zero training in an Uzi is going to wipe out 20 musketmen. Like, no problem.
Now we now know how to put more proppant in the hole and our better mud systems.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, our trucking routes all across the country, just to get parts from A to B, so all the service companies, operators work together. Trucking routes are now, computerized.
Oh, yeah.
So that truck can go to this many tanks to pull off this much hydrocarbon to get back to the plant.
You can't operationally afford to not do that. You will not be a competitive trucking company unless a computer is helping design the routes. Like, you just can't do it. You will be like, I wonder why we can't make any money doing this with one guy.
And there's the problem, right? I think with the rest of the oil and gas, whenever you're trying to connect everybody vertically, right, is there are still companies out there that don't have a tracking system. There are hotshot companies that have been around for a long time that still don't have a tracking system.
They get a call.
Absolutely.
Somebody calls somebody else.
Well, and a perfect example too. I mean, innovative technology over the last 8 years. I remember being out on wells and being a green hat, and I remember the next big job that they gave me, right, was, okay, you're going to get up on top of this sand hog, and then here's the lever that controls, the conveyor that goes into, to go down hole. It's like, okay, make sure you don't oversand the box. Well, how do I do that? Well, you have to watch it. Now you have portable proppant silos, right?
That watch it. Wow.
You remember having to watch it.
But human eyes are expensive.
Right, but now you have portable proppant silos that are dialed in to the blenders that are run through a program that dials it in. It takes that human error. I mean, I've been on a few jobs, thank God I wasn't one of them, that over-sanded a box on a blender and we sanded out. And you're talking, thousands and thousands of dollars shut down by human error. Well, how was that fixed? Well, okay, daggum, we're having these errors. We sanded out this many jobs. I wonder if we can get proppant delivered beforehand, exactly how much we need, tie it into the blender to pump it down a hole at a high pressure and make sure that we don't sand out. Oh.
You can do it all now.
Nobody's on top of a sand hog working a lever anymore. I promise you that.
Well, we know there's nothing you can't do with the right software. So what are before we wrap any of this up, what's some stuff you want to be able to do that just can't just yet, but you see it coming in the future? Is it the right hardware that goes along with your software? I mean, obviously you have, like I was talking about Pi earlier.
Raspberry Pi, exactly.
$10 out of the box, yada, yada. You can add all these attachments. You guys are way ahead and you're using cell phone, boards.
No, we're able to piggyback on the fact that we've built like 10 billion smartphones in the last, I'm forgetting the total number. It's like 100 million. I'm trying to remember the numbers.
Every single human on Earth, right, has some sort of...
Yeah, there's like a couple smartphones for every person on the planet, right? That has driven down the price of memory and screens and processors and everything else. And so it's enabled us to put these devices where formerly people wouldn't even want to spend an extra $50 a month on some well for the monitoring. It's like, I don't want to the point where you can give it to them for free now. It costs like $1 a month to rent a phone number.
And the software is the profit center instead of the device.
It certainly becomes a profit center. You can go to a service company and be like, look, not only will you be more operationally successful because you can talk to your gear and get reports from it.
Because the computers some of them are not much bigger anymore than the SD card or the cell phone card that goes in them. I mean, that's
a long way from $4,500 plasma screens back in.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, that's what I was saying. I've seen some computers where the chip for your phone, and then the computer around it isn't much. It's not at all bigger.
It's really all the interfaces to other types of sensors and stuff. So the GPS antenna or the cell radio.
The Apple circles that people can track by just like if a cell phone comes near it, sends all this data, yada yada yada.
Well, and that's one of those things too.
A lot of technology there.
And that's the innovation of technology is stuff even 4 or 5 years ago, right? It's now obsolete. 5G technology. I mean, tying in.
Well, that's what I mean. So, like the cellular network is better. You have way cheaper access to GPS and satellite.
My OnStar for unlimited data every month. It's $25.
They still have OnStar?
But everybody that has OnStar, if you haven't pressed that green button, spend $25 a month and you have unlimited data Wi-Fi signal on your vehicle.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And it's so mind-bending cheap that if I'm on top of a mountain without a cell phone, guess what? I have my internet and I have Wi-Fi calling on my cell phone. It's safety in your organization at this point. But look at what you can do with that. That little OnStar device can be anywhere in the world and track all of your data remotely. You don't have to have a cell phone tower for your whole oil and gas site.
No, exactly. You have to get these ad hoc networks, right? So what I was going to say to what I would love to see more of is it's already great we're able to take advantage of just how the total volume of electronics the world's been producing. So a chip, even though we've got supply chain issues, is still relatively cheap for what it can do. And I can take something the size of an index card and slap it on a surface drive and now give you a window into the entire world of what's happening there. Anything we can hook up to it. You get was there any rainfall? What's the barometric pressure on the surface? What's the downhole pressure? What's the downhole temperature? Basically anything. And I can put it on fancy charts. I can give it to your accountant. I can give it to your ESG guy, your ops guy. It's not only going to make your company more reliable and give you a better picture of what you're doing, it'll provide new top-line revenue ability.
That's the one thing I don't know if anybody's measured. I want you to find out, if you can, how many flare stacks are running in the U.S., and then how much is each one of them putting out?
It reminds me of, this is a classic interview question, at least amongst engineers. How many gallons of water flow out of the Mississippi every day?
I haven't measured that, but you might know.
I don't think anybody's measured it. I think like the interesting takeaway without getting into it.
You have to then find rainfall and charts and all that stuff.
It's more of a question to see how somebody thinks, but basically you can go on rainfall, you can go on the surface area of how big you think the delta is and how much would move past a minute based on the water volume. But what's cool about it is any engineer that starts like laying out their deductions kind of arrives at the same number.
Yeah.
Whether
processes
it's really right or not,
change,
right?
but so at the end of the day, you're probably going to be able to find out how many flare stacks are in the U.S. running.
Right. So like, okay, you have to ask questions like, why do you flare a well?
I want to find out.
Where
Yeah,
are
well,
the
that, well,
gases
yeah, but with at least we'll have the data, like how many wells.
Knight is very interested in finding out exactly what that number is.
Oh, I love. Hey, our nerdy friends will go find numbers for us. We just have to give them the task, and I like 6 months from now, I'll get a text like it's 73,000. I'm like, what is it? What are you talking about? You asked me. I spent like months. Like, oh yeah. Now I googled it, found it.
Never mind.
But I decided saw it. Yeah.
That's great.
So, elevator pitches, where you came from. How do people get a hold of you? Because I'm gonna get you guys wrapped up because I want to make sure that you guys are episodical. Okay. I want lots more of this. I want to find out, where you're at all the time, and I need you to come to my office and make it more efficient.
Definitely.
And also bring guests in. We have an extra seat here.
Okay.
So anytime you find a nerd that wants to like nerd out on software for oil and gas,
Well, and I think that's
bring them in.
I think that's one of those where
bring your customers in here. You let them give you reviews.
Oh, that'd be
I think that's one of those where you and I can kind of sit to the side and you can go ahead and give off an episode just for a tech talk and just let the software engineers, we can just sit back and we can learn as we go, because that's what I'm still doing.
I'm taking notes right now. I'm recording this. I'll watch this over and over again and go, what did he say you could do with that?
Well, definitely call Jonathan.
You can find all our information, Incyte, and that's with a Y.
Incyte with a Y.
Incyte.
Why do you do what you do? Make it better, make it faster, make it stronger with Incyte.
IncyteEnergySolutions.com, and my contact information there, and I will be more than happy. We'll come hang out with you.
Guys, God bless you for putting up with me. We've had 2 or 3 full episodes that I just forgot to record earlier, and now this one was the best one.
Absolutely.
And we're going to wrap it up here, and we'll see you next time. Take care. God bless. Go to oilfieldtailgate.com.
Thank you, guys.
Sign up to attend every home game in Norman. Be a sponsor. Be part of this. We love you. Bye.
Bye, guys.